So you're overthinking your mixes and the way you mix music, and you're still not satisfied with the results? You know what? I've been there, my friend. So in today's video, I'm sharing with you 5 simple mixing ideas that changed everything for me. And they might just do the same for you. So let's do it. Now, the first idea I want to share with you is the static mix, also known as the rough mix, which is basically balancing the tracks before adding mixing plugins. This is something that I've been doing for years. Before I was just like bringing all of my faders down and then like start with the kick and then bring up the snare, the overheads, so on and so forth. And I just felt I was wasting so much time doing it this way. So I started to work a rough mix before starting to add mixing plugins. And honestly, it did speed up my mixing workflow, like pretty significantly. Reason is very simple. By balancing the tracks right away, and I'm talking about bringing up the faders, like making sure you have like a good drum sound, the bass, a good relationship with the bass and the drums, just for balance, okay? Nothing else. No EQ, no compression, only the faders, okay? Same, adding the guitars, the vocals, making sure like I have something good going on right off the bat. Even panning, you know, panning the guitars left and right where they are supposed to be at according to the arrangement of the song I'm mixing, and all that stuff. And getting to a point where the song sounds decently good. Of course, not finalized because I still have all the mix to work on, but at least I have a good starting point and I know exactly where to go from this point so I can mix respecting the arrangement, the production, and just make all those tracks sound better, okay? So for example, I have a song here that I mixed years ago, and that was the rough mix session before I started to add plugins. Everything is balanced, I have some panning going on, and I even have a bit of volume automation. And also some gain staging, like clip gain and stuff like that, okay? To make it sound a bit more stable as far as the dynamics goes. And this is how it sounds like. So from this point, I have a way better idea on what to do while mixing to make this song sound better. When working with a client, it's gonna happen that I'm gonna receive a Cubase session of the recording. And usually when I open one of these sessions, it's gonna be the rough mix version of the producer or the artist that recorded the song, to give me an idea on the music arrangement and where they left off so I can take it from that point and make it sound better. And when I mix my own music and productions, I'm gonna do the same thing. The last save of my recording session is basically gonna be my static mix. Okay, this is where I'm gonna balance everything up before I start mixing. Now I'm telling you, if you take the time to work a static mix before you start adding plugins, it's gonna speed up your mixing workflow. Okay, now to the next idea. But first, this video is sponsored by JZ Microphones. So if you're looking for high quality microphones like the V67, which is one of my favorite vocal mic, you have to check them out. And by using my code Mixdown10, you'll get 10% off all microphones listed. The link is down below. Okay, now let's get back to the video. Okay, now idea number 2 is bussing instruments together. Okay, this is part of my mixing template. If you look into my session, I have my mixed drums group channel, one for bass, one for guitars, keys, and vocals. And these are gonna end up into my stereo out channel. And that whole idea on bussing instruments together keeps the session in order and easy to work with, actually. Now, the cool thing is that it gives me a lot of flexibility when it comes to dealing with a group of instruments. For example, the drums. Okay, so if I play this rough mix and I want to solo all the drums together, it's very simple. Okay, I can solo that instrument channel or mute all the others. And that's it, I can start focusing on the drums only. And also the fact that when I'm mixing the kick or a snare on its own, I'm focusing on these tracks only. But when I'm adding processing on my drum bus, now I'm kind of focusing on the drum sound as a whole and not focusing as much on kick and snare, okay? So it gives me another perspective when mixing a group of instruments together. So this is a huge advantage. Now, some will call this approach top-down mixing, where you can process group of instruments and then you have less work to do on individual tracks. In my case, I kind of do a bit of both, okay? So I do spend some time on individual tracks, but I do also process a group of instruments, and by bussing groups of instruments together helps a lot for that matter. And even inside the session, I use a lot of group channels. So for example, if I would listen to these guitars, now you can see that there's like 5 tracks playing at the same time, and they're all bussed into their own guitar instrument channel, which is stereo. Now in this case, I'm not going to process all individual tracks, but I'm going to spend time processing that instrument channel, okay, which is going to include again those electric guitars. And then that channel is going to end up into my main mix guitar group channel. Same goes for the drums. So all of my kick drums, which includes the recorded kick, the samples, are going to end up into a group kicks channel. Same for all the snare channels, top snare, bottom snare, samples, the toms, the overheads. Me and my friend Steve Durkins actually talked about bussing in one of our last episode of the Studio Stuff podcast. So if you didn't listen to this episode yet, it's a must. We go way more in depth on that topic. And if you didn't know about the Studio Stuff podcast that I host with my friend Steve, you have to check it out. It's available on all podcast platforms and also here on YouTube. Now, while you're watching this video, let me know if some of these ideas resonate with you, or if you have your own mixing idea that makes a huge difference in your case that I didn't mention in this video. Drop it in the comment section. I would love to hear about it. Now for idea number 3 is work with the plugins you know best. When I start mixing a song, I don't want to focus on learning plugins. I want to work with the tools I know best. And again, this is going to speed up my process, it's going to speed up my workflow, and it's going to keep me focusing on what I need to work on at that moment and not be distracted by a new plugin to learn about. So I never learn about a plugin while I'm mixing a song for a client or one of my songs to be released. I'm going to use a separate test mix session for that matter, because there's a time that I'm going to need to learn about new plugins, but when I'm mixing, I want to work with the tools I know best. And one easy thing, okay, to avoid being distracted by new plugins or plugins you don't know about is to create yourself plugin folders. I don't know if all the DAWs out there will offer you this feature, but in Cubase, we're lucky enough to have a plugin folder feature. Let me show you. So if you go up to Studio and down to VST Plugin Manager, you'll be able to create your own plugin folders and even add extra folders for different types of plugins. So from the VST Plugin Manager, you'll see that the top folder is called a collection. You can create a new one by clicking on the plus sign or the small arrow that will list you all the collections you have. So you can go from one to the other. Create one, delete one, so on and so forth. Inside these collections, you have a bunch of folders. You can create more with this folder icon to create a new one. And this is where you just drag and drop the plugins from the left window straight into the folder itself. And the next time you're going to insert a plugin, you select your collection on top. Mine is already selected. And there you go. I have all of my folders listed. I can add a compressor right away. Go for my favorite 1176. And there you go. It's right there, okay? So I don't need to go into the full default collection and being distracted by all those plugins when it's time to look for a compressor. I just need to select my collection, and there you go. All of my plugins, the plugins I love to work with that I know pretty well, are listed right there. Easy access. And honestly, while mixing, that makes a huge difference. Okay, now I'm looking at my list of ideas, and I think I'm going to have to add a bonus one. So you're going to have to stick around for this one. But now for idea number 4, EQ headphones and studio monitors. I've been EQing my studio monitors for years. At the time, I was using SonarWorks, which basically analyzes your room acoustics and kind of calibrate your studio monitors according to the acoustics of your room. Now I'm using the Arc Studio by IK Multimedia. I actually made a full video on this one. Same type of technology approach. They are both great systems for that matter. But the idea on calibrating speakers to a room is to get a more neutral sound out of them, okay? Basically, this is going to help to get good translation, meaning that when a song, a mix sounds good on these speakers, I know chances are it's going to sound well on other systems. Okay, so this translation part is a very important one. And also mixing decisions. When you have an accurate representation of the frequency range, it helps to make good mixing decisions. And same goes for headphones. And this is something I've been doing for only a couple of years to EQ my headphones to the Harman curve. And I made a full video on that one, which I'm going to list down below or right here on top. And that was a total game changer for me. And it's the same thing. It gives me more accuracy, better mixing decisions, more pleasant to listen to also. And my mixes translates way better on other systems when I mix on headphones. And the idea on EQing to the Harman curve is to emulate the sound of speakers that are inside a flat, controlled environment. But if you want to know more about the Harman curve and EQing headphones, go watch my video. Idea number 5 is to focus on the most important elements of a mix. Usually for modern music, we're talking about everything that is in the center of the stereo spectrum, like the lead vocal, the drums, specifically kick and snare, the bass. All these elements are in the center of the stereo spectrum and play a huge role in modern music. Whether you're mixing country music, rock, pop, EDM, hip hop, all of these elements are going to be very important. So I focus on these first. Everything else is secondary. So you pick what the important elements of the mix are, in your case, and you start with these. So when I have a good static mix or rough mix done, I'm going to start with my drums to begin with. And I'm going to use my instrument bus channels to mute all the other sets of instruments like guitars, synths, strings, whatever I have on my session, and even the vocals and the bass. And I'm just going to focus on the drums, get my kick, snares to sound fat and punchy, a nice ambience around the drums, and making my drums sound pretty solid. Then I'm going to bring the bass on and then the lead vocal on. I'm going to make sure I nail these elements first, and then I'm going to bring on my guitars, synths, strings, pianos, whatever I have left on my mix session. And I'm telling you, if you take the time to nail down the important elements of a mix first, everything else will take maybe 20%. So the important thing to begin with is to establish what are the important elements of the song you're mixing. So again, for modern type productions, we're talking about lead vocals, drums, kick, snare, and bass. But for an indie folk song, it's probably going to be like a vocal and acoustic guitar if there's nothing else, Sometimes the piano is going to be very important in the song you're mixing. So you pay attention to the relationship between the vocal and the piano. So just establish what are the important elements to begin with, start with that, and then everything else will basically mix itself. And now for the bonus idea, working with reference tracks. And the idea on working with reference tracks is not to copy the reference track you're working with. First of all, it's going to be impossible, and that's simply because you don't have the same recording as your reference track has. But there's so many things we can take out of a reference track or several reference tracks. First, you can focus on the general tone. So this is one way you can use a reference track. You can use a reference track for the way they work the effects, like the reverb, the delay on the vocal, the ambience around the drums, and stuff like that. You can also use a reference track and study how they pan stuff around, So there's so many elements that you can take out of a reference track to apply to your mix. And the goal again is not to copy, but mainly to make sure you are in the same ballpark, depending on what you focus on. So that's why sometimes I have more than one reference track that I work with for a song that I'm mixing. And I also have different reference tracks depending on the style of music I'm mixing. So if I'm mixing a jazz production, my reference track is not going to be a Linkin Park song, okay? And same when I'm mixing an EDM song, I'm not going to reference with a country song. So I have several reference tracks that I work with in different styles of music that I'm going to use depending on the style of music I'm mixing. Very useful. And how I work with them inside Cubase is also pretty special. So you have to watch this video if you want to discover the Cubase Pro hack I use to work with reference mixes. Hope you enjoyed this video. Take care and see you.